April 10, 1912. A ship unlike any the world. Recap begins now. While people say goodbye to the Titanic, then we move on to the present, where some researchers descend to the bottom of the sea to explore the ruins of the ship. One of the scientists jokes and reflects on the ship that sank on April 14, 1912. While they continue to explore, they mention that they are at 3,821 meters deep and that the pressure is 3.5 tons per square inch. The boy who records and reports this comments that if the windows of his ships break, it will be sayonara for everyone. Finally, they reach a point to enter the Titanic and deploy a robot suitable for the task, which they drive through the corridors. During their journey, they observe a candelabrum and then a piano. Finally, they reach a room where something catches their attention. They decide to move the rubble and discover a safe. Excited, they can't hide their joy and decide to extract it. Once out of the water, they place the safe in a ship. Everyone approaches expectantly. However, when they open it, they discover only papers and a notebook without a trace of the diamond they are looking for. The mythical heart of the ocean, lost when the ship sank. The researchers remember that something similar happened to another expert whose career never did the same again. Then they begin to review the documents and sheets inside the box. They use sophisticated materials and discover something amazing. A canvas with the drawing of a naked woman. One of the men, when he sees it, is surprised and exclaims, "Give me a break." Sometime later, the news reports about the discovery of said drawing and its connection with the Titanic. A lady who is doing crafts listens to the news on television. She asks her granddaughter to turn up the volume and, when she sees the drawing, repeats the researcher's phrase. Meanwhile, the researcher who made the discovery, Brock Lovett, continues with his tasks. He receives a satellite call from a lady who wants to talk about the discovery of the diamond. Brock answers, and the woman, whose name is Rose Calvert, tells him that the woman in the drawing is her and that she can talk to him about the heart of the ocean. Decided to investigate more, Brock sends him a helicopter. One of Brock's companions doubts the veracity of the story, but Brock insists on knowing more about the ring. Rose arrives, accompanied by her granddaughter Lizzie Calvert, who takes care of her, and mentions that they already met a few minutes ago, suggesting that Rose's memory is not perfect. Brock asks her if she wants something, and she replies that she wants to see the drawing. When she looks at it, Rose has flashbacks of the person who painted it and of that moment. Then Brock shows her a photo of the diamond and mentions its value, stating that it is an invaluable jewel. Rose confirms that she only used it once and that it was heavy. Brock wants to know about a claim made after the disappearance of the diamond. Rose mentions Nathan Hartley, steel magnate from Pittsburgh, who was his fiancé and gave him the diamond a week before the Titanic sank. The investigators assume that Rose must know the location of the diamond on the ship. She observes the objects around her and finds a mirror, amazed to see that it still retains the same appearance as the last time she saw it, although her reflection has changed. She also finds a comb that moves her for some reason. One of the investigators asks her if she is ready to return to the Titanic, to which she answers. They show her a sinking simulation, where they explain how the Titanic collided with an iceberg. Due to the speed and darkness, it was difficult to see the iceberg, which opened a hole in the hull of the ship, allowing rapid water entry. Although the Titanic was large and resistant, the water flooded the parts that made it float. This caused the ship to begin to tilt, and after a few hours it split in two, finally sinking at the bottom of the sea. Rose thanks the explanation, but comments that living it was something totally different. Brock, interested, asks her if she can tell him. Rose gets up and looks at the screens where she sees the route recorded by the robot they sent before. When she sees the doors and corridors of the Titanic, she relives several memories that move her deeply. Lizzie suggests that she rest, but Rose insists on staying. Brock brings a tape recorder and encourages her to share her story. Rose mentions that 84 years have passed and that she does not know if she will be able to remember everything, but Brock motivates her to try. Rose prepares to tell her story, starting with sensory details. She remembers the aroma of fresh paint and the color of porcelain on the Titanic. Thus, the story takes us to 1912, where a young Rose descends from a luxurious car with her mother, Ruth, and her fiancé, Nathan. She observes the huge ship and comments that it does not look like much. Nathan, proud, explains to her that the Titanic is 30 meters larger than any other ship and much more luxurious. The three go directly on board, while the rest of the passengers wait in line, thus showing the marked difference between social classes and the symbolism that this had at the time. Rose reflects on her own life. On the outside, she was the educated and refined young woman that society expected, but on the inside, she shouted with consternation. Then the story takes us to Jack Dawson, who is in a bar playing poker. He decides to risk everything in one last move, putting a ticket for the Titanic at stake. Everyone is surprised by his audacity, and in a comical moment, he deceives his friend Fabrizio, and then reveals that it was just a joke, since his cards are the winners. Both celebrate not only having kept the tickets, but also having won a good sum. Suddenly, they hear that the Titanic will leave in 5 minutes. They quickly pick up their things and run to the ship. Upon arrival, they say that they are from the United States and joke with the people in charge of the check-in, saying that they can skip the check-in because they do not have a ticket. The joke works, and they let them pass. Once on board, Jack and Fabrizio go out to say goodbye, realizing that they do not know anyone there. They make jokes about it, while the ship begins to move. Both shake their arms with enthusiasm and joy, excited by the new adventure they have ahead. After this, Jack finds his chamber, and introduces himself along with his friend to his roommates. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ship, Nathan observes how Rose accommodates some pictures of Picasso. He comments that they do not look like much, to which Rose replies that she does like art, highlighting one of the differences that exist between them. Rose says that in Cherbourg she climbed a lady named Margaret Brown, whom everyone called Molly. She explains that Molly became rich because her husband found gold, but her mother did not consider her worthy of her esteem due to her humble origin. This difference in social classes is evident in the relationships on board the Titanic. After a while, the Titanic reaches a point where you can only see the sea around. The captain orders the entire machine to move forward, and the process starts. Machines, valves, coal and workers synchronize to propel the great ship forward. For his part, Jack, excited, runs to the corners of the ship to see the sea and feel the wind on his face. Seeing some dolphins swimming next to the ship, he is filled with joy, and in an impulse of euphoria, he shouts that he is the king of the world, enjoying the moment with absolute satisfaction. At the same time, in the luxurious part of a fine restaurant, Nathan talks to the people who designed and created the Titanic. They mention that it is the largest mobile object in the world. In the middle of the talk, Rose decides to smoke, but her mother tells her that she does not like her to do that. Rose, defiant, spits the smoke in her face, and then Nathan takes the cigarette from the girl. Then, without consulting them, he asks for lunch for the three of them. In response, Rose asks one of the companions if he knows Freud, suggesting that perhaps they built the Titanic to compensate for something unconsciously. After saying this, she gets angry while her mother asks her what's going on. The ship designer, confused, comments that he does not know that Freud and supposes that he must be another passenger. Meanwhile, Jack is drawing a cute scene of a father and his daughter. They talk about the construction of the Titanic and how, although it is an English ship, it was built by 15,000 Irish, who are now few in the crew. They comment that the ship is solid as a rock, although the only drawback is that first-class dogs make their needs there. Jack makes a critical and funny comment about how that keeps people in their place, which is likable to a man named Tommy Ryan. Thus, Jack meets Tommy. At that moment, Jack notices Rosie's presence, who went out to enjoy the landscape. The two cross their eyes, and Tommy warns him that it is better not to listen to him, saying that it is more likely that angels will come out of his ass, so that he can approach her. However, Jack continues to watch her, while Rose, somewhat nervous, looks at him several times and tries to hide. At that moment, Nathan appears, who tells Rose that he knows what he did, although she, still angry, moves away. One night, at one of those parties, she decides to flee and arrives at a part of the ship where she finds Jack, who is looking at the stars. However, she does not see him and is willing to throw herself to take her life. Jack notices her and calmly tries to dissuade her. He tells her about his childhood in Wisconsin and how he used to play on the ice, remembering that falling hurt like hell, insinuating that jumping into the sea would not be a peaceful death. He even tells her that he will jump with her if she does. Finally, Rose moves away from the edge and the two meet, but she slips and Jack holds her to save her. Suddenly, the security team of the ship arrives and they believe that Jack has tried to do something to Rose, so they stop him. Rose clarifies the situation, although she omits the part about her intention to commit suicide. Nathan, angry at first, calms down and confirms Rose's version. Both smile and leave separately. Although before, an officer suggests giving Jack a reward, Nathan proposes to give him $20, which, to the current exchange rate, would be equivalent to $800. However, Rose considers that this is not an adequate reward for someone who saved her life. So Nathan invites Jack to dinner with them and leaves. Jack, before leaving, asks the man who accompanied the couple for a cigarette, and when he receives it, the man points out that he has the needles untied. In his room, Rose receives a gift from Nathan, a diamond that belonged to Louis XVI, known as the Heart of the Ocean, a jewel that only the nobility used. Nathan tells her that they are also of the nobility, and that there is nothing he would not do for her if she opened his heart to him. After this, Jack and Rose walk on the boat while he tells her about his life. However, he also wants to know the reason for their meeting. She explains that she only wanted to thank him for helping her and saving her the night before, in addition to the discretion he had in not telling anything. Rose comments that Jack probably thinks that her problems are insignificant compared to his. But Jack contradicts her, assuring that it is not like that at all, and that the first thing he thought was what she should have gone through to get to that point. She begins to talk about her problems. She mentions that she feels invisible, as if it were just a trophy, and that when they arrive in Philadelphia, there will be a crowd of people waiting for her wedding. All this only makes her want to scream and fill her with anguish. She feels a huge weight and does not feel understood at all. It is then that Jack asks her directly if she loves her fiancé. Rose does not answer, gets angry and calls him rude, saying that the conversation is becoming inappropriate. She says goodbye, but Jack jokes to lighten the moment, and Rose decides to stay a little longer. Instead of leaving, she takes Jack's drawing notebook. When she opens the notebook, she realizes that he is quite talented. She sits down to see the drawings, observing several tender scenes, like the drawing of a mother breastfeeding a child. She admires the beauty of his art, and Jack mentions that in Paris they have praised him. She, almost for calling him poor, comments that it is incredible that, despite her situation, she has traveled so much. While she continues to look, Rose comes across some drawings of women in the wild. She notices that Jack drew the same woman several times and deduces that he liked her. Jack, funny, replies that she had beautiful hands, and just at that moment they find the drawing of them. He jokes, saying that the good thing about Paris is that many women are willing to undress. Rose comments that he surely had a romance with that woman, to which Jack, laughing, replies that only with her hands, since she was a gallant woman, and she lacked a leg. Soon they come to the drawing that shows that particularity. Finally, they find a portrait of an older lady, who was sitting in the corner of a bar waiting next to the jewels that an old lover left her. She was known as Madame Bijou's. Rose praises Jack's talent, and they both joke about it, until he mentions again the incident when she tried to jump into the sea, changing the expression on Rose's face. At the same time, it is observed that Ruth's mother treats Mrs. Molly Brown with disdain, although in some way they include her in the conversation in between. For his part, the ship's planner talks to the captain and suggests that he accelerate the engines to get to New York as quickly as possible. The suitman tells the captain that, although he already knows, it would be beneficial for his career to arrive earlier. Meanwhile, Rose spends the day with Jack. They talk about the things they do, and Jack promises to teach him to ride a horse like cowboys. Rose also asks him to teach her to chew and spit tobacco, to which Jack immediately agrees. They both have fun spitting, until Rose's mother appears, who is surprised to see them. Mrs. Molly Brown, for her part, gives Jack a hand and tells him to wipe the spit from his mouth, which he does. After a brief exchange of words, Rose takes her mother and her friends elsewhere before dinner with Jack and Nathan. Mrs. Molly Brown asks Jack if he knows what he's getting into, warning him that he will enter a nest of vipers, and advises him to go well prepared. To help him, she lends him a suit, his son's, and after dressing him, she tells him that he looks radiant like the sun. Later, Jack heads to the place where dinner will be celebrated. When they cross the door, they treat him like a lord, and while he walks through the luxurious hall, he imitates the postures and way of walking of the men of the place, receiving various greetings. He practices a little until Rose arrives, whom he greets appropriately, joking that he always wanted to greet in that way. He offers her his arm, and she accepts it. Then they meet Nathan, who comments that it is surprising that Jack can pass as a gentleman. Jack replies that he almost is. Already at the party, Rose tells him the gossip about the people of the place. First, she mentions a man who has a wife waiting for him at home. Then she talks about the richest man on the ship, and how he tries to hide the great age difference between him and his wife. She also points out a woman who looks like any mature lady, but in reality, he designs vulgar lingerie, a talent that has made her very popular among royalty. They approach to talk to the people, and Rose suggests to Jack to lie, saying, for example, that his family has a mine, or that he is the son of a wealthy trained businessman, and so he will be able to enter the club. Jack puts this into practice, and manages to pass unnoticed. They ask him about his third classroom, mentioning that they have heard that it is very good, to which he jokes saying that it is the best he has seen. He has almost no rats, which causes laughter in everyone. Then Nathan introduces Jack and adds that he saved Rose last night. She comments that, in addition, Jack is a great artist and that he has seen his works. While serving the food, Rose helps Jack to sit properly, although he has problems with the blankets. Mrs. Molly Brown tells him that the blankets on the right are his, and those on the left for him, explaining that he must start from the outside in. When the time comes for the caviar, Jack says that he did not like it much, which draws the attention of those present, who want to know more about him. They ask him where he resides, and he mentions the number of his dressing room, leaving the rest to God's will. When asked how he could afford the ticket, Jack replies that he goes from work to work, although this time he won it in a very lucky poker game. Nathan intervenes, saying in an approving tone that a man makes his own luck. However, one of the women present does not consider it a good way of living and questions him about it. Jack admits that he likes to live that way, without knowing what the future holds for him. He explains that a few days ago he was sleeping under a bridge, and now he is having dinner with elegant people on the most luxurious ship in the world. He concludes by saying that life is a gift, and that one never knows what hand will touch the next day. By this point, Nathan no longer feels very comfortable. While Jack comments that the best thing is to take advantage of what is coming and make every day count, Rose decides to toast, repeating this last sentence, and the rest of the present follow her in the toast. Next, Mrs. Molly Brown tells some hilarious anecdotes, causing laughter on the table. After a while, the men decide to retire for a gentleman's meeting. Nathan approaches Jack and asks him if he will stay with the ladies. Jack replies that he must return, to which Nathan tells him that it is the best. He also comments that he would invite him to the meeting, but that they will talk about politics and history, topics that, according to him, will not interest Jack. Before leaving, Nathan gives him a bundle of money. After this, Jack approaches Rose and gives her something in secret, although one of the women present notices it. Jack says goodbye, and Rose discovers that the note he gave her has the phrase written, "Make the day worth it," along with a date set on the clock. She goes to the date, where Jack is waiting for her. He tells her that he will take her to a real party. They go to a bar where people dance and sing while drinking beer. Rose has as much fun as ever, even showing her talent for ballet while laughing with Jack. However, in the middle of the celebration, a man in a suit appears and watches them from afar. The next day, Rose and Nathan have breakfast together. Nathan comments that he expected her to accompany him at night, which did not happen, insinuating that she must be busy. Rose realizes that he sent his coach to watch her, the same man who saw her with Jack at the party. Both confront the issue, and Nathan becomes violent, reminding her that she must honor him, since she is his fiancée. After this scene, he leaves, leaving Rose affected. One of the maids approaches to help her and comforts her. At night, Rose's mother reminds her that she must marry Nathan to be able to save herself from the debts that her father left her. Then, everyone goes to do their activities, such as attending church. Jack tries to talk to Rose, but they prevent him and ask him to return to his section. However, seeing the stubbornness of the boy, they decide to escort him away from her. Then, Rose has a conversation with the captain and the ship's designer. She discovers that the captain plans to accelerate the speed of the Titanic, and from the designer, she learns that there are not enough lifeboats for all passengers, only for half. The designer comments that they were reduced for aesthetic reasons, and that, although she wanted to add more boats, she ended up giving up, believing that the Titanic was practically impossible to sink. In the middle of this conversation, Jack manages to escape disguised and manages to talk to Rose alone. She reminds him that she has a fiancé and that she loves him, but Jack doesn't believe her. She tells him that she understands how the world works and that she understands what is at stake, but she also knows that she feels trapped. Jack tells her that, although she still has strength and life over time, that fire will be consumed. Rose tells him that it is not his duty to rescue her. He agrees and adds that it only depends on her. Before separating, Jack reminds her that if she jumps, he will do it too. While she drinks tea with her mother and her mother's friends, Rose observes how a mother corrects her daughter, which makes her recuperate. Then, she decides to go with Jack, and tells him that she has changed her mind. Together, they have an iconic moment in the cinema, and then she asks him to paint her like his French ladies, but only with the necklace on. They spend several hours in this activity, and in the present, the old Rose mentions that it was the most erotic moment of her life, at least until then. Brock and company listen carefully and ask her what happened next, to which Rose replies that, to everyone's misfortune, Jack was very professional. After kissing, Rose asks Jack to keep the notebook in the safe while she writes a letter to Nathan. Meanwhile, the captain of the ship notices that the visibility is not good, since everything is very dark. They mention the possibility of finding icebergs, but they neglect the matter, and decide to keep the speed to get there as soon as possible. At the same time, Nathan discovers the letter and the drawing in the safe, and gets angry. He starts looking for Rose, and sends the same man who had watched her before to find her, Rose. However, she runs away with Jack, and they are both persistently chased. They run through the boiler room until they reach the warehouse where the cars are. There, they decide to surrender to the romance inside one of them. Nathan arrives at the safe, finds the letter and the drawing, and decides to do something about it. They keep looking for the couple, and arrive at the warehouse. They see the car, but when they open it, there is no one there. Rose and Jack are outside, kissing. She tells him that when they get to New York, she will go with him. They continue to show affection, and meanwhile, some guards observe them from a distance and get excited. They return to their work, and soon they see an iceberg. They inform the captain, who orders them to dodge it. They almost make it, but when they crash, the lower part of the ship breaks. The boilers fill with water, and the crew evacuates while the safety does close to contain the damage. Meanwhile, the high command of the Titanic begin to worry. The second and third class rooms already show the wrecks of the water entrance. Some passengers, seeing the situation, decide to follow the rats, trusting in their instinct to find safe places. Jack and Rose, alerted after hearing the captain's conversation about the imminent sinking, decide to warn Ruth and Nathan. However, when they arrive, a guard finds the diamond necklace on Jack and accuses him of theft, leaving him in a complicated situation, while Rose, astonished, doesn't know how to react. In another area, the officers check the ship's plans and confirm that the flood is unstoppable and that the Titanic will sink in 1 or 2 hours. The captain, when he finds out, complains of speeding up to gain publicity, foreseeing that, in any case, they will be on the headlines. Meanwhile, Nathan loses control and hits Rose, insulting her in the middle of the tension. At that moment, someone arrives with news about the critical state of the ship, and Rose, determined to know the truth, goes to a high command, who confesses the seriousness of the situation. Jack, however, is handcuffed in a dressing room under the surveillance of an armed guard, while the lifeboats begin to fill up with women and children first. The musicians of the ship, knowing that the end is near, decide to play until the last moment. Jack, impotent, receives blows from the guard before he leaves him alone in an apparently hopeless situation. Nathan and Ruth, meanwhile, make cold comments about the situation, believing that the lives of third-class passengers are not worth it. Nathan even mentions that Jack's drawing will soon have a lot of value, assuming that the young man Rose, angry and determined, rejects Nathan and escapes from his grip, preferring to face the danger rather than being his wife. Rose, in her desperate search for Jack, receives indications of where he could be. After finding Jack, she kisses him before going in search of help. However, the crew flees to save himself, and no one assists her until, determined, she takes an emergency AX and returns with Jack. After practicing a little, she manages to break the wives and free him. Meanwhile, Nathan decides not to board the boats and will confirm that Jack is dead, taking his lackey with a gun to make sure. Jack and Rose try to escape, but discover that they do not let anyone from third class pass, except women and children. Joining forces with their friends Tommy and Fabrizio, they manage to break a gate with a bench and find a way to continue. By this point, half the ship is almost sunk. The musicians do not stop playing, offering their music while some passengers make it impossible to get on the boats. It is mentioned that it is not known how much weight and passengers support each one, which complicates the situation even more. The armed guards try to impose order, and the shots soon begin to resonate. This marks the beginning of chaos, and the situation worsens when Nathan's lackey confirms the location of Jack and Rose. They go there, and under the pressure of the situation, Rose gets on a boat. Nathan, pretending to be compassionate, assures him that there is another boat waiting for them further back, and that Jack will go with her. Rose, trusting him, accepts, but Nathan confesses to Jack that there is no such boat, at least not for him. Unable to leave Jack, Rose decides to get off the boat, and they both meet again. Nathan, instead of getting on a boat to save his life, takes the gun from his bodyguard and runs to chase the couple. He catches up with them and begins to shoot them, although they manage to be saved by little. Nathan runs out of bullets and, with a sardonic laugh, wishes them luck in their relationship. His ally asks him why he is laughing, and Nathan replies that he left the diamond in Rose's coat, the same one he had given her minutes before. Jack and Rose continue to flee, and on their way they see a child. They try to save him, but his father appears and takes him away, although the water reaches them. Jack and Rose manage to dodge the disaster and reach a closed door with the water about to catch them. A man passes by, and they ask for help. He doubts, but finally tries to open the door. However, the keys fall, and desperate he apologizes and flees to save his life. Jack manages to pick up the keys and opens the door at the last moment, managing to get to the surface. Meanwhile, Nathan tries to get on one of the boats. He notices a child, and after offering money to let him get on, the guard tells him that this time his life is worth more, threatening him with the gun. Tommy tries to intervene, but the guard, scared, shoots and kills him. Fabrizio goes to help him, and seeing the situation, the guard decides to take his life after saying goodbye. At this moment, Nathan decides to use the child he saw before, pretending to be his son, which allows him to get on one of the lifeboats. Jack and Rose meet Andrew, a high command and friend of hers. He apologizes to Rose for not making the most resistant boat, and gives them some lifeboats before preparing to sink with his creation. He is not the only one with that conviction. A third-class man also refuses to put on a lifeboat, declaring that he lived with elegance and wants to die in the same way, although not without enjoying a brandy first. The captain has the same determination. He watches with serenity how the water fills the cabin of the ship, accepting his destiny. Back with the musicians, one of them decides to stay playing, inspiring his companions to do the same. They will lose their lives doing what they love most. In the midst of this resignation, several people accept the inevitable. An old couple hugs in silence, while a mother tells a story to her two children, giving them a last moment of peace. By this point, the water has entered almost the entire ship. Those who accepted their destiny were attended, while the rest tried to save themselves, heading to the highest part of the boat to avoid being swallowed by the sea. Jack and Rose do the same, while Nathan, not being able to stay in the boat, is also in danger. The couple reaches the highest point, the same place where they met, something that Rose notices and about which she jokes slightly. At this moment, many people decide to jump with their life jackets. Suddenly, the lights turn off due to a human accident. Rose's mother observes everything from one of the first boats having left, horrified by what she sees. The boat finally splits in two. Rose and Jack climb to the top and wait until the boat is completely under the water. They end up floating in the ocean, although the panic is still a problem. Rose almost drowns, but Jack helps her and asks her to swim now. They reach a piece of wood that seems to be part of a door. Rose climbs, but when Jack tries to do it too, the balance becomes impossible. He decides to stay in the water, barely holding on, and assures Rose that the rescue boats meanwhile. Those who manage to get out in the first boats are also terrified. At one point, the tension leads some to threaten violently to maintain order, which causes Mrs. Molly Brown to remain silent, while Ruth is in shock. The Titanic's guards group the ships, while those waiting at sea freeze. Literally, the hours go by and Jack is increasingly frozen. Both speak, and he assures Rose that she will live, have children, and be happy. He asks her to survive, no matter what. Over time, a rescue boat arrives, but finds many people lifeless due to the cold. Rose sees the boat and realizes that Jack is dead. She tries to ask for help, but her voice is missing. Fulfilling the promise, she says goodbye to him and nothing to the body of a guard wearing a whistle. She takes it and makes it sound, calling the attention of the rescue team, who illuminate her with a flashlight. Already in the present, Rose has a trembling, but clear voice that there were 1,500 people lifeless at sea. 20 boats, but only one managed to return. That boat managed to rescue 6 people from the water, including her. The rest of the boats were lost, leaving their occupants at the mercy of the darkness of the ocean, waiting for a solution or the inevitable. Among those boats was Nathan, Mrs. Molly Brown, and Ruth. Nathan ended up in the same rescue boat, but he didn't recognize her. For him, she was just another survivor. But among many others, Rose explains that he continued with his fortune for some time, but after a deep crisis that left him devastated, he ended up taking his life. At least that was what she read in the newspapers, although she could never confirm it in person. She assures that after that disaster, that was the last time she saw him. When they finally arrived in New York, they were greeted with many questions. They were asked their name for the reports, and without thinking about it, she responded firmly that her name was Rose Dawson. It was at that moment when in her heart she felt that a new life had begun, a life without the pain of loss. Although the memory of what happened would always follow her, Rose confesses that she had never told this story to anyone before. The investigators, when they heard it, were thoughtful, and when they reviewed the files, they mentioned that there were no records of Jack. Faced with this, Rose responds with a melancholic look, stating that she doesn't even have a photo of him. Therefore, now she only lives in her memory, a place where he is still alive, in her heart. Although time has passed and reality has stripped him of his physical existence, it is the first time that she speaks of him so openly and with an almost imperceptible. She tells her granddaughter that her grandfather didn't know either. He was the one who saved her in many ways, much more than anyone would have imagined. After telling the story, Brock reflects in silence about what he has heard in a deep conversation with Lizzie Calvert. The truth moves him in a way that he did not expect. At the same time, the old Rose, even with the diamond in her power, finally decides to throw it into the water, feeling relieved to do something that had been delayed for so long. As if, when she got rid of that burden, she would also free herself. Then a memory of the past, that exact moment when she realized that she had the diamond kept in her jacket. That night, Rose sleeps, surrounded by photos of her youth. In them, you can see that she fulfilled the promises she made to Jack, living a full life as he asked her. Already in her dreams, Rose is seen again